Boom, video just begun. What up, dude? How you doing?
It's the collab of the century,
It's the
long
collab of the
awaited,
century.
and now it's finally happening. Yeah, what's up? I'm doing amazing. I'm looking forward to this. I'm a fan of the channel, fan of the format.
Dude,
Yeah, and I usually like to talk about vocals, and now I get to do it on the internet with somebody who's also very into vocals. So I'm stoked.
Bill, yeah, and I'm impressed by your speed, dude. I think the time that passed in between me sending y'all a message on Instagram and us sitting here right now is like record like time for actually getting one of these videos set up, because like holy crap, like I was talking to you about before the video, you were like, let's do it Monday or Tuesday, and I was like, that's tomorrow or the next day. Holy crap, let's do it. And thankfully I had the time, because actually right now, as you know, because I told you, but the viewers might find interesting, I've got the COVID right now, although it's much better. My voice is it's still a little dicey. Like, I can do most of my harsh vocals for a little bit. Singing, upper register is still gone. Um, but it's cool to have you here, man, especially because y'all are doing some crazy stuff. And at the time of this video going up, you'll have released a new album.
Yes, that's right. Also,
Yeah.
regarding the thing before, I mean, we're a very like hands-on band,
Hmm.
right? So, I'm trying to stay on top of a lot of the social things and just like stay tuned in. So, like, whenever something like this pops up, I'm like happy to dig into it, especially with such an occasion.
Hmm.
Yeah, and also regarding the other thing you've been saying, the album will be out, surprisingly for a lot of people, probably just because we haven't properly announced it apart from like teasing it on social media with stuff like that. And that's super exciting. I mean, obviously, at this point, I can't really tell you how I feel about the release just because it hasn't happened yet. But right
Sure.
now, I'm very excited for it to happen and to see what people think about the 4 new songs that they haven't heard, and obviously the whole album experience as a whole,
Hmm.
because it was intended to be an album.
I'm pretty pumped because this is I was waiting to tell you this. I actually I'm doing this hardcore reactor style,
Do
hardcore
it.
reactor style, because I actually have never heard a Vianova song start to finish, and I will tell you why. Because
Ah.
when this song first dropped, when Uyaya first dropped, somebody sent me a clip, okay, and I was like, this is some weird shit. I was like, this is, and so I want to actually I was like, I can tell that I'm gonna listen to this, and it's not just gonna be a lot of the deathcore stuff that I'm used to, which like I know and love, right? But I was like, this is really actually quite good to have as like an actual reaction. So my exposure to y'all in your catalog is whenever you show up. Now, I'm familiar enough with your sound because I never like skip a video. If I see you guys pop up,
No, no,
I'll
no.
watch
I
a little
get
bit
that.
of
I
it.
get that. I get
You
that. Yeah.
know, that's why I was
That's
partially so
like good
excited to do this.
control. That's good control, like mental control to have to just like. And I was like, at some point, I was thinking about that with reactors. I was like, okay, if something comes up that you know you will like, are you like holding back, or like maybe you not only you would like, but like you would be interested in? Are you holding back on it just because you know you can just like make a video on that? That's probably just a big factor on that, right?
It can be. I'll tell you.
Mm.
I'll tell you. I don't really. For years I've stopped telling people that like it's. I've kind of dropped the illusion of the always first time reaction. Some people, viewers of the channel, know that most of the time I've either heard the song or enough of the band to kind of know what to expect. But for me, when I really protect it, like you're talking about, is when I know it's going to be something pretty special. When I know it's going to be something like I'm like, oh dang, this is
Oh,
going to
then
be
this will be
interesting.
super cool, man.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So
cool.
when I tell you, like, yeah, I actually have never heard a Vianova song start to finish. That would be kind of weird for most interview scenarios, but for this one, it's like because I think it's so interesting. So it's kind of like it's
No, no,
it's
no.
a
I
nice
totally
thing. You
get
know what I'm
it.
saying?
It's also like I mean, you're a busy man. You're a father, so I'm not sure like how much time you have on your hands. But in case you do listen to the album, I'm low key kind of like I'm happy that that you don't know like all the songs already, just because at this point we've released like 6 singles, right?
Hmm.
And they're like I'm like that also, where I'm like, I wish they would have released less because I like the format and I want to dig in, especially if it's like intended to be an album experience. But you also have to think about that there are people that get to know you for the first time with newer releases. So I guess
Mhm.
if you can have that at any point, you get to listen to the whole thing. I mean, super super interested to hear your thoughts, just because like you don't have the perspective of viewing single songs as singles. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. I do intend to listen to it.
I
It'll be
mean,
during
no pressure. I know like how it is. Like I all the time I'm like, okay, I want to listen to the record, and then life is lifing, and you don't listen to music for like a week or something. That happens. So
No,
I'm not.
my music listening time is the nights when my wife puts our son to bed and I'm doing the kitchen cleanup after dinner. Usually
Yeah.
because it takes him about 45 minutes to like wind down. So usually I can get through an album then. But let's hop into it.
Yes.
Let's have my first ever real Vianova experience right now.
That's insane. Nice.
With Ooh Ya Ya, I think it'd be a lot of fun, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped. So, let's do it. Here we go. No YouTube cuts. Ooh Ya
Before you
Ya.
get into it,
Oh,
I just
before I
have
get
to
into it.
mention, also for the people like maybe the first time viewers here. This is like with our sound, it's no one song is really representative of the Vianova experience. That's something to keep in mind, just because they are all so different. But this one is definitely very extreme in the way we're doing stuff. Just so you know.
Well, heck yeah. Why am I like saying heck yeah when I
No,
was
do it. Flip
cursing
yes.
earlier? I don't know. Flip yeah reminds me of my upbringing. Oh, what the frick? Um anyways, all right, I'm gonna light the incense. You always got to light the incense because you got to keep the stank at bay. Just kidding.
Oh my
All
god.
right, here we go. Ooh yeah yeah Vianova, let's do it. That's already a good place to pause.
Yeah.
I'm
A lot
getting
of stuff happening.
I'm getting the vibe. Look at this guy shining your shoe.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect
awesome.
frame
Well,
to
yeah,
stop.
good shot. So, so, see, like I laughed and my voice went higher, and it was just like, Anyway, so there are a lot of interesting things here to talk about for sure. And I mean, the obvious thing right on the surface, right on the front, right, is this genre fusion, right? It- and it's like we could call it genre fusion. I guess we would call it genre fusion, but
Yeah, pretty much.
you go from a very distinct sound of like what would we call that?
It's like
Like
soul, jazzy soul, pretty
jazzy
much.
soul, a little bit of
Yeah.
funk, maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
Pretty much like Marvin Gaye inspired.
exactly. And then we go into something that is a little less genre specific, but I want to talk about that jazzy soul section first.
Throughout like the album, we have like choir sections, like gospel choiry things, and like we
Mhm.
had one singer which I actually met way back, like a few years back on The Voice. I was on The Voice once.
Mm.
Um,
I
and
didn't
I
know.
met
How did I
her.
not know that?
Yeah, I don't talk about it a lot actually. I don't know.
Oh,
It was a fun experience, but I'm not like, yeah, I was on The Voice. Fuck yeah, you know what I mean?
sure.
But yeah, I met her older. She has just like a different just voice type and also like a musical background that like we don't have. And honestly, it would feel wrong to like do this kind of genre stuff without like getting in people of color because then it would be kind of like a whitewashed kind of thing, if you know what I mean. So like she has like collaborated on this with us, and we wanted to give her like this feature spot really to showcase her voice just because like in other parts like she has been part of the choir more in the background, and then also like
Sure.
she sounds like for me like really like wise and like she has such a mature voice which I think like fits the part really well, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
like for me, yeah, that was why we decided on having her there. Like I had a demo where I did it too, but like with her it just like felt right to also like give her yeah, the spot. I also like originally like planned to sing the part. However, like with her, like we were at the studio recording like the choir
Hmm.
backing stuff, and we were like, "Hey, how about you just sing that?" And then she did it, and it sounded amazing. And we're like, "Okay, it has to be this way." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why she's here. And also like it's so funny. I know I'm already yapping a lot, but that's how it will be with the intro section. We were like thinking of like keeping it as an interlude, but it's like related to the whole song just because like overall in the song like there are like backings popping up that are samples that are based on the intro. Like we have no synthesizers in the song. It's just like samples of the intro
Mm.
basically.
Hmm.
And we were like, oh yeah, should we keep the intro like as an interlude? So like you just have the metal section, but we were like, no, it's way more interesting for us at least as a whole song. Um, to like to have it as an intro and not start with the metal thing. And it's been interesting to see that like some people like it, some people are like, yeah, what is up with the elevator jazz at the start? Where I'm like, yeah, bro, it's music, there's more music in your music. I get the tastes are different, but like for me, it's very
Sure.
like, yeah, we get, there's music in front of the music. But for some people who only listen to deathcore, it's just like, yeah, why do I have to wait for the good music? Why do I have to listen to the bad music before the good music starts? Which is kind of funny.
Well, I think people have been, ever since I was a wee young lad back in the early 2000s. People were still at shows. Like literally, you'd be at a show and somebody would be pacing around in the back of the room, and they'd be like, "Where's the breakdown?" So there's always going to be that subset of person who they just want their like vending machine button push type of music. But when you're doing something like this, I think it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more special. So what I'll say is let's go ahead in this case and let's talk about a lot of the in fact I kind of want to go back and I want to hear that transition one more time because
Mhm.
um I want to pay now a little bit more attention to the screaming that you're doing. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your harsh vocal technique. I know you did a interview with Scream Dudes where you talk a lot about it. Don't know if it's actually released yet, but let's listen to this part and I'm going to put my vocal coach ears on a little bit more instinctively. Yeah, exactly. And also it's a cool transition. There's a lot of like little chimey, glassy elements to listen to going on at once. You know what I mean? But let's go ahead. Let's listen to this transition one more time. I'll get back up to the shoe shine spot, and then we'll talk harsh vocals. So here we go. Yeah, so this is there are a couple interesting things to talk about here. I want to ask you about that main pitch vocal that you're doing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because it's
the higher one,
interesting.
the yelly one.
Yeah, exactly. Being plugged into the vocal world the way that I am, um, I see some trends and I miss a lot of others. right? I see some things and I miss a lot of others. And there have been a ton of influxes of people asking, like, a year ago, people wanted to learn almost exclusively like pitch lists, like that type of stuff. Now I'm getting a lot of people who are coming in and they're like, yo, I want to learn how to mix grit and my voice together. Right. So, and there are so many ways to do it. So talk to me about the way that you're mixing grit with your voice. What does it feel like? What's the sort of process that you go through to reach that really nice, because it's really nicely placed, it's really nicely
Yeah.
aimed, and it seems very, very balanced to produce.
Yeah. So like that is basically my main yelly, shouty vocal technique throughout the
Mm-hmm.
record. It's a bit of a weird run because I have to like take a step back because like I started with like classic false chord kind of stuff that I
Sure.
built out throughout my time as a vocalist. And I think this is something that people would rather describe as like a fry-ish, like from kind of texture technique, but we know that stuff is a bit like the terminology is a bit outdated.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there are like so many things that fall under that spectrum.
Right.
So yeah, and so I learned this, like I took like also some lessons over the years, and what really helped was also like building out my mixed voice and like just my higher register. And then like when recording, I kind of like I was experimenting with distortions in higher registers, but this was when I was recording the last two EPs. And I had this, which like it's kind of towards like the Chris Lipe-ish sound of like
Mm-hmm.
you have like a note in a like singing beltier kind of way, and then it breaks, but it doesn't. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Is maybe I can. The thing is like it's really tricky because like I need a lot of warm up time to get into it, because sometimes like it just doesn't work at all. Like my vocal cords want to stay too closed and just produce the note, and sometimes
Mm.
it works perfectly. That's why like right now for live it's a bit tricky, and I've been like just experimenting just because like we've been like growing into playing more live shows with
Sure.
Vianova within your stuff. Like I've been experimenting with just like trying different techniques to match the register, right? Because you have to
Mm-hmm.
find sustainable ways of doing it. And also it's like a very high intensity kind of vocal just because it's very loud and has like a lot of volume. If I do a and I like I'm already like talking so much around the topic, but that it's necessary basically to give you
Of course. Of
a
course.
good
Yeah. Yeah.
framework of just like I guess really getting the educational value. But I'm a tenor right now, like not very loud with my other technique, but like if I would
Mm-hmm.
do this, I would just I haven't done any harsh vocals today, right? So I would just try to find a higher place note. Hey! Hey! Yeah! Whoa! The pressure! There you go. Something
Yeah.
like that. And the thing is, like right now, you can tell I have a lot of it's a lot of this more like just true fold engagement, and it's also a lot of like grit in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more my voice gets warmed up, the more you get like the crispier, like shrieky, fryish overtones in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have the theory it's just because like stuff is getting more loose, right? Because what really happens, I think, like from as far as I'm aware, is that just like you're yelling like this with distortion, and you get like true vocal fold chaos. Just like the vocal cords flapping around. But since you're like not adding, like you're not squeezing them together, it works,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
guess. But it is like a technique that takes a lot of energy for sure. And I think like if I like right now I'm working towards like a live variation where I'm like doing more like of a compression based technique in a similar register. However, like I'm still working on that. And this one is like it's great in the studio just because like it sounds very angry.
Sure.
And it like one thing like with this song, like we do like at the start we do have layers. I'm like layering a low and a high, but like
Oh
throughout the
yeah.
record I
Mm-hmm.
was like trying to just not do a lot of layering. I don't double track vocals unless it's for effect of like a high and a low. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just do like one vocal track for this record just because I just wanted to keep it like as expressive as possible. You know what I mean? And like with this technique, because you're yelling, you know, I can be hey, very expressive. I can like add the emotion.
Yeah.
to that. That probably sounds a little bit more shit right now, just because I don't have the cool, like, high fryish overtones in there that, like,
Sure.
come in when I do it more. But
Hmm.
you know, I think it's also good to have a realistic expectation of like what how like a voice can sound like, just because with this obviously you get the best takes, and now
Yeah.
you get the real shizzle.
You get the real view. One thing I noticed, I'll tell you this, and then I have some comments about what you said, which was very fascinating. And never apologize to me for going into more detail. Because that's what I'm here for. That's what I've built the whole thing on. So the more information you want to give me, the better. Like, it's like a gold mine, right? So, speaking to like what you said about like, oh, you want to have like the real sounds. One thing I found interesting is that I noticed back when I first started doing this, I was so apprehensive about any of my mistakes being visual. No, you can't do that. And then one day I just got tired of it. And I mentioned this, I think, in my interview with Alex Tyne from Version's Crown and Black Tongue. Eventually I just got tired of all that stress, so I just left him in. So there are a ton of my videos now where I go to do some sort of scream, and it doesn't click in, and I just leave it. And nobody cares. I've never heard anybody in my life be like, oh, the vocal coach messed up. Nobody's ever said that to me. But it's interesting what you're talking about, because you're hitting a point that I think is very imperative for a lot of vocalists to understand, new and experienced or returning. Like, it could be anybody who they've just started doing vocals, or, maybe they are coming back, their band's going to start playing again after like 10 years. What the hell? Do you hear all that noise?
No, I just heard a little bit, but it's all good, dude.
Okay. Hopefully I can cut it out in post, but anyways. So essentially, it's that not every single vocal is going to be created equal, right? And this is something that you're well aware of. So I'm mostly spelling it out for the viewers, less for you. You know this. But there are some vocals that we can do all day, every day, no problem. And like for me, that's like my lower mid register stuff. But other vocals, you're going to kind of have a studio and a live version, right? It is something that's kind of true. I find that one of the best ways to and this is one of my best things ever. Well, it's not mine. I didn't invent this. But one of the tricks that I use is kind of like an order of operations of trying to find the most comfortable way to do anything, which is basically like activate, place, project, right? And so when you're doing that scream, the first thing I notice is it doesn't sound like when you did it fully, it sounds cool. It sounds awesome. But in its like tiny little phase, it sounds almost like, who Lemon Grab is from Adventure Time? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that right there, your activation. I'm not going to do it because my voice is all. Oh,
no, all good. Don't. It's also like a thing like when you're sick, or like your voice is kind of like tired, like you shouldn't
See this
do it without like 1 hour warm up.
This is where people would criticize me if I did it anyway. They'd be like, "That's so I won't." But you could do like the unacceptable, unacceptable, and you just kind of get that little baby sound, and then you just barely press into it just a little bit, and you'll find a good assuming it's not hurting you and all.
And
this.
that is like, you're totally right, but like with this specific scream, for me, it's the one thing where it's different, which also like makes it really hard on like bad voice days, because like everything that I'm doing, I can scale. Like that's also like how I've been approaching it. I want to be able to scale the vocals, and like for you, like the way you're describing it with like placement, activation, and projection, or like I don't know if I got the order right, but that's basically how I approach it as well. Or like, let's say I want to do a low. I can do it really, like I can activate my false chords very easily. It's very low effort. Some people would think this is fry, but it's not. You can hear that I have my true voice in there, and then gradually, I can like add stuff in there, and this is like already like it's very quiet. Whoa, and then if I want to project, I project, right? But like since with the higher yelly stuff, like the bass is a yell, I can't really do a speech level version of it. I can't, you know what I mean? And like with everything else I'm doing, I scream, I can do this and activate and do the placement, but and then I can
Yeah.
project it on speech level. But like this yell thing, I can't basically, and I think the reason for that is because like you get the screamy quality with the projection basically, like
Hmm.
it like it basically works with like the energy that you put into it, which is like a problem for me, I'll be honest, with like reliability, and that's why I'm working on somewhat of an alternative that is like a more of a like really compressed wow, wow, kind of this thing, which like also like is not very stable at the moment, but something in
Hmm.
that realm, you know what I mean? And that is that like there it applies because there I have much more control over that. So like I'm not like I'm just like adding on top of that where like, and this is like I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that with this technique, the framework that we are using for our techniques, I cannot
Hmm.
apply it, which is like I would like to honestly.
So sometime when my voice is healthier, we should hop on a call because you
Yeah.
can. You absolutely can. Guarantee it.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it's a matter of understanding. I will say it can be difficult to do that when you have a scream that is dependent, because I do in Kardashev, I do a ton of pitched gritty screaming,
Okay.
tons of it. And so it is more difficult to do because you have to have familiarity with where you're going to land, right?
Yeah.
But if you know the sound of the seed that will grow into the tree of the scream, then you can aim just that small little activation, get it in the right spot, and you can be sure that when you start leaning into it properly in that very specific place, it will then into what it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah, like,
So
it's a very specific
I
it's a
could
very
show you.
specific thing because yeah, like before we say that, maybe that's also like relevant information. Like I can hit the note with my clean singing voice. Ah, like do it, let mixy and no energy, right? Then I can project it. Hey, yeah, no problem. Then I can add grit. Yeah, wow. But that's and the scream. However, the scream is when you're like trying to lose control over it. Yeah, wow, wow. I can, you know what I mean. I can do
Mhm.
that. However, like like the additional step of making it
Oh.
screamy and not singy, that's like where it's hard for me to scale it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I would show you. It would be so much easier
No,
for me to show you, but my it's not
no,
going to
dude,
be.
no. Let's not risk it. Like we can figure something out.
I'll tell you this. It's not going to be as good. I'll tell you this, and then we can keep going with the song, because this sound I can make with no issue. If I can place, right,
Yeah,
because as you know, like pitch screams, they can be more taxing when not done properly,
yeah.
or when done with too much effort, right? So if I can do this sound, which doesn't yet sound like my full-on pitch scream. I have multiple pitch screams that I do. You're familiar with the fact that you can take grit and pitch and put it in different
Yeah,
places.
of
You know,
course.
you know
Yeah.
this from experience. But if I can do like this sort of sound, like does that sound like
Mhm.
my pitch scream? No.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Right? It sounds goofy. But I know for a fact that sound, if I activate it and then I place it right around here
Mhm.
and then I start leaning in, I know what it's gonna turn into
Mhm.
100% of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I probably could help you out, but like I said, we can do that on another call or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's keep going because I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear some of the other stuff that you're stacking as well. There were some really
Yeah.
cool
Of course.
and your false chord sounds way different than mine, which is always really exciting because I think a lot of people, so I'm going to see if it comes up again in the song. I think a lot
Yeah.
of
Probably.
people, as someone who loves everybody knows this, I love any sort of false chord technique. I love it. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I just don't like old school death metal." I'm like, "It doesn't have to sound like that. There's a lot of variation."
Yeah.
And so it'll be cool. I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for us to talk about it. But let's go ahead and keep going because I'm really interested to hear where this goes.
Your back is breaking all along. Can you carry the guilt?
Yeah.
How long can you carry the shame?
really like what y'all are doing production wise with this song, right? I really like how your voice is, you know, I think it makes sense now why you single track your voice, but then we'll multi-track it, because in those spots where you open it up, where it pans, or you have something a little bit more driving, it really makes that contrast work. And I think that that's one of the things I'm noticing about this song that's the most interesting, is that y'all are using contrast very well. Also, like, this is a vocal channel, but like, shout out to the other members of the band, because they're doing some wild stuff that I have no expertise to describe. I can't describe what the guitarists are doing, but they're doing a lot
They're just playing 0 0 0 0 on the low string, and with our producer, we just make it sound fire.
Yeah, he just pushes the good button, right?
Yeah. He just hits the string really hard, and then producer pushes the good button, and then I scream.
That's it.
That's
that's it. You know, that's it. So yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of lower stuff just now too.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. Like I said, let's go ahead and talk about it, because your low stuff and my low stuff sounds very different, but
yeah,
sounds very cool when you do it. Like, you have a tonality that I don't generally have in my voice. So of course I want to pick your brain about that. So talk to me about.
Yeah, wait. I think you're like a little bit more like classic false chord-ish in the way, as you described, it's a sound you like. And I think I'm really aiming for something that is a little bit more voicey, I guess. But it's also like, I also like have to take a step back and just like, I guess, say like how I got to there, because as I said, I started with like the just normal false chord vocals, or like a tutorial that somebody tells you to sigh really heavily, right? That's where I started. And usually what I think is also like very interesting, and I think I have to mention that I used to watch a lot of tutorials back in the day, and just like dig through the whole internet. And like, it's always really interesting and funny to see when like vocalists give interviews, and they're like, yeah, and I started a sigh, and then they do something completely different, and you as a viewer, you're like, what the actual fuck is he doing, right?
Yeah,
and that's why I want to take the time to also say like how I got to the place where I'm at, so like it makes more sense, right? I started with a sigh, this kind of thing, right? And I have like a higher, more like tenorish, squeaky ass voice, so I can I have just a higher tonality in there. And then later, like, I worked on that, but I also like then like the first like more technical stuff I got into that helped a lot was obviously like throat singing Kagura, which like I think like everybody's doing now. Like very very basic stuff nowadays. Back in the day it wasn't. Back in the day it was like, oh, what the fuck is this? Wow, amazing. So like you get a different type of like feeling for your voice, because it's like more of flow phonation, right? You're not like pushing air through to get the Kagura. It just feels like more of like putting the distortion on top of your voice. Whoa, wow, and it's more of a fluent kind of thing, right? So like, and it also like gives you a good idea of like the placement for distortion. I think like you can move it around, stuff like that.
100%.
And then I also like took like a lot of vocal lessons pre-COVID, I think, with a guy called Hell Scream Academy. He's a Russian vocal teacher that was before the war. And like he had this really interesting way of going through things and like just teaching very minute details. I also went like mixed voice with him, and also like accessing I'm not sure if they're the arytenoids or false chords. Like it's just a rattle thingy, like a wow. This is very low energy for me. Wow, and you can tell I like have some activation in there, and it's also like always connected to my head or mixed voice, right? So now I don't have this thing where I try to push a lot of air through to get the activation, but I like kind of try to have a mix of a little bit of air and mixed / head voice in there. It sounds so technical, but I'm not thinking about all that stuff when I'm doing it.
Exactly, yeah.
So like when I go into a like vocal, I'm like I'm not doing so much of that, and I'm not sure about like the voice position in there, if like the kind of thing is so good. I'm like thinking more of like, whoa, yo, you can tell this is the kind of bass position that I have, and then I have the distortion there. Whoa, the pressure and the down, and it sounds very yelly if I do it like that. Whoa, more of a like mid kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
And but it's like it's not that it is not as like the classic false chord sound. I think like sounds more dry-ish. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think like just because my rattle is like the rattle I have in there is like has this certain quality, it doesn't sound like the classic kind of false chord vocal. I'd say.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting hearing how so many people go about it differently. You know, for me, I'm honestly, after all these years, when I say false chord, I feel like I'm talking about an ingredient more than I'm talking about a dish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I show people how to do something more like, you know, like A-I-O, whoa, something like that, I feel like I'm handing them, again, an ingredient that tastes great on its own, but also goes really well in other things. And so, you know, mixing them with various activations of vocal cord activity, or a little bit of a rytminoidal rattle, like you mentioned, or tossing in a little bit of twang or narrowing so that we can get, you know, brighter tones. For me, like, that's kind of how I've come to view it. You know, one of the ways I like to describe it is oftentimes when somebody points at a vocalist and says, you know, that's false chord, it's like pointing at a cake and saying that's eggs. It's like, well, you know, it's got eggs in it, and that's a very important part. And so certainly we can hear that activation in your voice too. And like you said, it lends to higher spaces because of your voice, but it also gives you this really cool shouty tone, this really like, it lends to your voice being a bit more emotional while still having the aggression of like deathcore vocals in it. And I think that fits your music very well, because your music is very like, very I'm trying to find the right word. Expressive and dynamic, but also kind of like, granted, again, this is the first song I'll have ever heard all the way through, and we're pausing and talking about it, but it's almost like sassy is not the right word, but it's a bit.
I get. I get. There's like this. I think expressive is the right word, just because like it's not that like metal music or modern metal is not expressive, but there's a like certain kind of culture, I think, where stuff just sounds very perfect in a lot of, you know, you can have like and I could have that with, you know, just having a perfect growl every time, or like the scream just like hitting the note every time like the same way, and you're like not like modulating with like the way you're saying stuff. And that's like also like if I try to like get the perfect scream and then layer it 3 times so it sounds really amazing and awesome, then I will have that. And this was something that I was trying to go for like with releases before that. But I think now with the way we're trying to do stuff, also with the production as well, like the way the drums sound, the way the guitar sound, the other elements we have, it's like we're really going for something that has a lot of character. I feel like, so that's something that, as you pointed out, is inherently a part of the music at this point.
Yeah, you know, anytime it's interesting, the engagement of, or I should say, the perception of vocal cord activity, the perception of voice really is kind of such a dividing line and a deciding factor into the sort of vibes that a song and that a band will have. And I think that it's, you know, there are a lot of intuitive choices, and I think it makes, like, all your vocal choices make a lot of sense for the stuff you're trying to do. Let's go ahead and let's keep going. But yeah. So far I'm going to try to be good. I'm crossing my fingers because I don't want to technically be a liar. I'm going to try to be good and let it play for a little while, but
dude, all good. I mean, it's okay for me.
Hell yeah. All right, well, let's keep going.
No expectation.
Yeah, I was literally about to like go ahead and do that. So, you know, this seems like it would be difficult music to write if you did, well, it seems like it's difficult music to write regardless, but it's like listening to this and watching you perform, like the way you're dancing in those spots, like, you know the source material. You know
Dude,
what I
it's
mean?
funny
Like
because like
I
that
saw
was
a
like
little
the
MJ
guy
kick,
dancing.
you know?
That wasn't me actually.
Was
I think
it,
that's
dude?
yeah,
You're a chameleon, bro. You're everywhere but nowhere. What the hell?
No, yeah, we have to. I mean, I think that's just the side product of us like stopping and you like paying a lot of attention to the vocals, just because there's a lot of stuff happening and a lot of people missed it. Like in this video, we have the storyline of like us performing the music video, then sucking to bed. Then the director is like, "Okay, you guys suck. You have to get out."
Get out of here.
We get
Yeah, yeah.
replaced, so like the
Yeah.
second part is like the replacement guys. And then like at the end, like the last scene was like the camera panning on us, and like we're now the cleanup crew, which will like have happen again in the end. Just just to give a little explanation, if anybody was like seeing the video was like, what the fuck is happening? That's what's happening. Yeah, sorry, just I wanted to get that out of the way.
That's fine. And that happens all the time. Like I'm so like focused on like vocals and composition.
Yeah,
where I'll be like, what's this video
also,
about?
like,
And people in the comments, they're like,
that's what you asked about, composition, right? Yeah, I mean, we have to like, something we have to acknowledge is that like we have, as I said, like a lot of like different songs on the album, more like unheavy songs, more a little bit poppier songs. We have songs that are more straightforward, and like this is definitely one of the crazier ones, if not the craziest, in terms of structure and what is happening. And that was also because we felt like the record, like the album, like needed something that was just at the point of the record, something that is just like heavy and gives you that kick, right? And for us, it's interesting because like at a point where like we wrote this, we listened to it so often, we're like, oh, is this too lame? We just like, it's just like zeros and shit like that. You know what I mean? And then it came out and people like, this is crazy. How do you write this? So for us, it's super funny to hear it, because like if you're so deep into your own like rabbit hole, you just like, you don't hear it anymore. I was at a point where I'm like, is this heavy enough? Like, stuff is so heavy. I'm not sure this is heavy.
Yeah. The last person, this is my experience, the person who's hearing the album with the least accuracy is often the person who wrote it upon release, because your ears are so numb to the process. But I'm kind of interested in what your writing process looks like as a band. I know we're stepping a little bit outside of vocals, but it's
all good.
It's got, like you said, not so standard of a song structure, to put it mildly. And so like, as somebody who's been writing music in a band for a long time, it's always interesting how people do that. And with all these kind of crazy moving parts, it's especially interesting. So like, what does your writing process roughly look like, if it's standard or anything?
Like usually we have like some kind of rough idea. Like I will go on to like the greater like structure of things. But with this, it's what is interesting, right? Because in a way, the structure, like it's very chaotic, but in a way it isn't, just because like we have the main riff at the start. Then we have just like all kinds of crazy shit happening, 0 0 0s, modulations, shit like that. And then the main riff comes back, but it's slower. Then like we have this like the theme coming back. And then we have crazy shit again, and then like the song gets slower again, and at the end, like the breakdown is also based around the main riff. So in a way, there is a structure to the song. I think it's just very hard to pick up on, just because shit is getting so crazy. Yeah, and like regarding the whole process, it's very interesting for this record, just because like before, basically Felix, our guitarist, wrote all of the instrumentals. Like he would leave some space for drums in a way, where like he would rather do a basic drum beat, and then Paul, his brother, who's also the drummer, like he would step in and like program, or like just try out more like nuanced, like complicated stuff, flashing it out, bass and metal, usually following the like the guitars more often than not. Like also Raul, our bassist, would add stuff onto it, but Felix would do a majority of the work, and I would like basically slap my vocals on top of it. That's how it worked the first 2 EPs. Now with this album, it was very different, because at a certain point, like we wrote the first 2 songs. It was similar, like the first 2 songs we wrote for, I mean, you will not know them just because like you haven't listened to them, but like for the people viewing that know us, they were Melancholic and Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune was the first, both like more poppy, not like more melodic, not as heavy songs.
Mm.
And there it was like Felix wrote half of the song, I did vocals for it, and then like we talked about like what could happen, or Felix would also like, I think like him getting vocals earlier also like made a difference in
Sure.
like the way he would like keep writing, just because like we know what we're building towards. Maybe like if he would talk on this, he would have more to say. And then like the most like the game changing part that happened is that we started working with our producer Leon.
Mm.
And Leon, I have to drop the lore because Leon, he's a roofer by trade. Like he's a
Oh,
full-time
really?
roofer. Yeah, the guy like who mixed all the records, like he builds roofs full-time. However, he's a fucking musical genius, right? Like he plays all the instruments. He like started producing dubstep when he was like teenager, so like he's really good in DAWs, and then like he got into metal later on. And I got to know him like via a friend, and we're like I started having like a little side project thing with him that never came out, just for fun, because like he was writing on his own. And at one point I was like, yeah, guys, there's this guy I know, Leon. He's also like way younger than us. There's this guy I know, Leon. Maybe we should just like have a production session with him. And for me, I thought like, yeah, he should do like sound design stuff, but because like he has access to way more plugins and sound
Sure.
stuff.
Mm.
So like the intention wasn't really to like have him like that deep in the project, but what happened ultimately is that Felix, like we entered the session with a song that was half finished basically, and then 2 days later we left with a finished song, which never like like usually we write, like we take a lot of time to write. Like Felix, he's a very like he owns a dumb phone, he doesn't have a smartphone, like he takes his
Sure.
time, right? So like with us the process is not like we weren't a quick writing band. And with that, like we had the possibility of like going to him, and like for some reason it's just like that he just like as a guy that like wrote a lot of music for himself, like he's not very experienced as a producer, but like he just wrote a lot of music and he knows a lot of music theory and stuff like that. Like he can get ideas very fast, and like with him we had this chemistry of like having a situation where together we could be in a room, and like like Felix would have like he would have riff parts. We could be like, oh, how about like trying this at this point of the song? Then like he would like we would work on a section before. Oh no, this doesn't work. We could move the section around. Like later in time, also like Leon sometimes wrote a part. Then like Felix, we were sitting in the same room. How should we do this riff? You give the guitar around. Like our bassist also plays the guitar. Like sometimes he has
Nice.
stuff to add on to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like basically most of the time it was like Felix had a bass idea for something. Like that is the workflow that we established over time, is that like he has a bass idea, maybe half the song is finished, maybe like Felix, we have an idea for a song and like he ends up writing parts, but we're not happy with like where it's headed. And like there's the point of like before we would have to like just chew on that for months on end and like then figure it out ultimately. And like with Leon, it was like way more fun because like we could go to him, he would have a fresh mind, we could like brainstorm some stuff and usually just like realize them very quickly, and also like have them sound way closer to the finished product. Like it's still a lot of time between, like a lot of like a difference between a demo and a finished mix. However, like just also like knowing how stuff will sound like, and like sitting in a room together, and also being able to like think about vocals when you're writing the song. Also like something that really made a difference in the way stuff came out. Maybe with this song not so much. We are very classic, let's just let's just like do the zeros and make shit crazy, and then vocals gets slapped on top of it. But like with other songs, like it did make a big difference.
Sure.
So yeah, our process has like changed a lot, and we were able to also like go into like songs with more of an idea first, and not be like, yeah, this is a collection of riffs, it's 3.5 minutes long, please have vocals on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I know exactly what you mean. It's so I think the one of the most interesting things that you talk about there is it seems like there's an insinuation that in the writing process, there's not a lot of like, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, not a lot of like ego. It seems like you and the way you're describing a lot of the band members is that there's a lot of openness to talk about different sounds and ideas and try new things. Now, that's not to say that I'm, whenever you get a bunch of very creative people in a room, sometimes the conversations can be very passionate. But it seems like there's a lot of willingness to view the writing process as a bit modular, like hand the guitar to this guy, see what he does,
Well, yes, and in a way also no, just because like as a band, obviously you have like like if you talk about a lot of stuff and creative things, like tension arises from time to time. However, like it's in a way we have like this. It's a way of a setup where like the main idea or like the vision for like how we want it to sound now, I think is something that Felix and I conceived. Just because for some reason, like it's almost like we had the same kind of like a wind of change blowing with what we wanted to do, like, but like with us, like basically without us having to talk about it, which is very interesting for me. And when we started writing the album, I know that our drummer Paul, like he did his master in study, so like he was kind of a little bit out of the project, then came like more back to it, so like he had some catching up to do in a way, like
Sure.
with being involved in the process. And also our bassist Raul, like his role, he's more of an old head, and he says it so himself. He's like, yeah, I don't listen to any music that came out after 2010. Basically, he's like, and he likes prog and like just stuff where like it's all about like the musicianship. And also like
Sure.
for him it was a bit of a pain in the ass, just because like we're playing really low, and like with this album we're playing even lower, like drop E. So like for him, he had to like tune his bass lower. He's like, yeah, the string is floppy, this sounds ass, I'm just playing one note, this sucks. Basically, right? So like for him, I'm laughing, but I'm sorry. It's all good now. It's all good now. Like, it worked. But
Yeah.
yeah, like for him, like he'd really like at some point he also like said so himself, like, yeah, there's some songs or like some ideas he doesn't like, he doesn't get it, and he's not like
Sure.
he's not a fan of it, which is okay. But like I noticed like he was still like everybody was still like involved and happy to be part of the process, even though like
Yeah.
I think the main creative driving forces were like with Felix and me. And I'm not saying this for ego reasons. It's just like that's what happens. And it's just like I think Raul, like he also has a lot of like not vocal, sorry, like music theory knowledge, and that came like really in handy with like some sections. So like he still was able to contribute as like a musical craftsman, like from time to time. Yeah, and like Paul is still the drummer, so like he took care of like drums, right?
Sure.
So but like there was like a structure, and like in a way like with Leon, he's more of like a like he loves like all kinds of genty stuff. And at first like he was into like what we are doing, but he took all like for him it also took some time to like really, I think, understand it fully. But like now that he does, like he was really like put a lot of energy and time also with the mixing and the final production to like really like fulfill the creative vision, I think. Right. So
Sure.
like in a way it's not like that optimistic kind of vision of us, like everybody's sitting in the room and it's like democracy and we're like, what should we do? And somebody puts their finger up, it's like, I have this idea, and everybody's like, yay, let's try it, right?
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
But
no, I'm kidding.
yeah, but no, sometimes there are obviously times where you just sit in a room, you just try stuff out, and everybody's involved. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah, it's always interesting to hear kind of how things go, and I find that that's fairly typical. There's usually like it makes sense that it almost always is the case that there is somebody with like maybe one or two people that they're like, hey, we've got this very specific vision, and then everything kind of works around that. But I'm
Yeah.
kind of interested to hear where this pause section is going, and earlier when you were like,
Yeah.
you should pause here, that makes me think
Totally.
some
As I said,
nasty's
I'm
happening.
yapping a lot. I just want to add something, just so when I say like I'm also part of the I guess like creative driving force, I'm still just a singer, and I don't play the instruments, right? So like I just wanted to say this, that it's not like I'm a crazy genius. I just don't want to seem like I give myself more credit than I have. I think I have like some aesthetic choices and a vision for the band, which was also part of that. But it's not that I don't want to like overdo my role, as they say, like over exaggerate my role in the process. I just have to add that to like dampen the singer perception thingy.
Yeah,
And give my bandmates some credit. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. I so far I've thought everybody is you. So I thought you were on the drums and on the guitar and on the bass. So I thought that this guy with an entirely different hair color was you. So no, I'm kidding. All right, let's go ahead.
Cool.
Let's hear where the rest is going. We can see from the little viewership thing that something pretty good's about to happen. So let's go ahead. Let's check it out. Here we go. Yeah.
No one can take on your vision. No one can take your pain. There is one way.
Oh, killer. Yeah, I can see why people are like, there's like this whoop on the outro there. I love a good outro, dude. I love a good outro. So I'll let you pick. You want to talk about, I think I know which one is the goat scream, but you want to tell me about your gutturals or the goat scream first?
I think I will start with the gutturals just because I think it's an interesting topic for one specific reason. People like sometimes I hear, "Oh, Alex, you have range," and I'm kind of surprised. And this is maybe something like you can relate. I think a lot of people like when you can do a high scream and a low scream, they will be like, "You have range." But for me, it feels. I feel the imposter syndrome just because like when you know how to do those things, like they are not so far apart from each other in terms of actual pitch. It's just like more placement stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With a high being here, and low being here. But like the voice really just being in a similar place. Like obviously it's lower pitched. And for me, I'm a tenor. Like I don't have a lot of like chest voice volume. So like maybe an Alex Terrible is very loud with the scrolls. I am not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very quiet, and that's also something to consider. Vocal like volume just very quiet for me. No, not very quiet. So very different all around for me.
Sure.
And gutturals, like I really can't do like your voice, for instance, or like your growl feels much lower than mine, or like not much, but like lower a little bit. You probably have a little bit more range in your clean voice also. I don't have that, so I like try to trick a lot. And first, like my real guttural, like it's very compressed.
No, you can tell that it's very
narrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like the voice below, it's
still this higher mixed heady voice, which makes it easier to go into the distortion. That's what I have in there.
And it's something you like. For instance, like the vocalist from Landmarks, Flo, like probably not the same technique, but you can also hear a very like hollow, kind of head voice below, right? And then obviously you have like all the kind of like tongue shit happening, which is common knowledge at this point.
Sure.
Just doing this thing, but like still, like even if I don't do it, it's very like like pressed and like a thick sound. Probably maybe similar to what you're doing, I guess, because I noticed like your low growls are also very, very gurgly. Probably not very mind-blowing stuff I'm telling you, but I just like, it's just maybe interesting for the viewers to be aware of that my voice is not very low. It's just that I'm making it small, dark, and compressed and gurgly.
Mhm.
And I think somebody that inspired this was also Dickie Allen. I love his low screams. It's not the
Oh
same
yeah.
approach, probably, but like just having this this very squishy, gurgly sounding thing. That's something I really like, even though
Mhm.
I'm not doing it as much. But for this, it was very appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you hear it
Now,
right now, like it's not that deep actually.
yeah, and that sort of thing that you're mentioning, you know, obviously over time my range has gotten much bigger, but people say that, and when people say like, oh, you've got range, they're talking about perception. When you
Yeah,
are thinking about your voice, you're thinking about mechanics, right? And
yeah.
so when it comes to the mechanics, this is something that all my viewers are always curious about, so I'm going to ask you on their behalf. When you're
Hmm.
doing, again, that activation sound, which isn't the scream yet, but it's going to be,
Yeah.
and I don't do any sounds like that at all, so I'm not going to be able to mimic it very well, but like this, like
Yeah,
when
no, but that's funny because like you were doing it and you were putting a vocal fry in there, and that's the reason like it sounds that way. Perception mechanics, right? My bass, Kargira.
Mhm.
And one thing that happens, it's very interesting. Kargira, when you move it around, obviously probably different for people. But if I move it to the top, I can control it right now.
Mhm.
It starts to break up. Sounds very fryish. One would maybe somebody would assume. And I feel like the more heady I get, the more it breaks up, basically. So also with this,
I just get more mixed voicey, and then I move it, and I'm more head voicey, and you
Mhm.
can tell that the voice in the back is very much not as chesty as if I would do it like that, and then if I compress it.
I'm pretty much
So
giving away the sauce
that
at this point.
Yeah, so that part, that's the one I want to ask about, because this is what all the viewers would ask. What does that
Yeah,
feel like? What's the sensation? Because that's what everybody wants to know. And
it's
when
very similar to throat singing,
Mhm.
but like you can move that, like you can feel that it's. You can just feel like that the vibration like is different. It's basically it feels like throat singing, but like the feeling of the vibration gets more rapid, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And then does that feeling, because I know for me, because I Kargaria is the baseline of a lot of stuff that I do, like
Yeah, yeah,
for me, when I and this is something that I've kind of done by intention, because having to sing a lot in Kardashev, more than I wish I did. I know, I'm kidding. I don't mind. It's just a joke. But I always want my grit to go as much that way as possible. If I've
yeah,
got, I say if, like they can
yeah,
move. My vocal cords are here, so I always want my grit going that way,
yeah, yeah.
away
No,
from those. So for me, the way that I have intentionally, and I'm aware that it works differently for other people based on their style and what they do, but when I transition,
I know. Yeah, yeah,
that distortion almost feels, if I didn't understand how these sounds work, I would almost think I'm making it in the front of my face, because everything goes,
yeah, yeah. No, I get it. Yeah,
you know?
that's
So
also what
when
I have.
you,
Like also with different sounds. If I would, I'm also putting it here. And also with the higher, also like very much here. This one, no, it's pretty much placed more in the back, and that's also something that I learned over time is like just trying around with different distortion placements. If I do it very like low intensity, not the Kargira kind of thing, but it's related.
Mhm.
Doing this, right? I can do it like very much like closed NG, is it called?
Mhm.
Mixed, and also move it like to the back. It sounds very fryish.
but it's not like I can make it more false chordy.
I think like the main difference, like it still doesn't feel like on the throat. It's like still a little bit. It's this will not like help anyone just because it's a feeling you have to,
It's a feeling you have to find. Yeah.
you know what I mean. But it's not. It still feels like in front of the vocal cords, if you want to describe it that way, and not like very like throaty. And I think like the defining factor that makes it work for me is also like the way my true voice acts underneath. Like it's very distinctive.
This kind of vocal position is the thing that makes it very easy to activate it. Very yawny.
And that's like I've been also trying to work towards doing something that is more chesty.
Yeah, this would be more chesty,
But it's also like it gets scratchy more often,
Mm-hmm.
and that's also like what makes like the low stuff work.
Look at that, that's a very tiny, cute Scooby-Doo ass voice right there.
Yeah.
And like
yeah.
the beef just comes from now you could like it fucked up a bit, so you could tell like what happens when it doesn't connect, right?
Dude, the description of Scooby-Doo and the voice is one of my favorite ways to start getting some. That's what I tell my students. Not all my students are doing that, but
Yeah.
a lot of my students, one thing we'll do is to start transitioning from Kargria into a more gritty sound is we'll take our Kargria and then we talk in it, and then we kind of think about talking like Scooby-Doo. Oh, Shaggy. Oh, Shaggy. Oh, and then it turns into something harsh, right? Now, you've led into another question that I want to ask you, and this might sound kind of weird coming from me, but one thing that I have found, especially being plugged into the vocal world like this, is if you ask 50 different people what a fry vocal is, you will get 50 different answers. And so I'm less, interested. It's honestly gotten to the point in my vocal journey where I don't even put. They're important terms and they matter, but I find what matters most in my experiential day-to-day life is speaking the same language as the person I'm talking with, and also understanding how they are using those terms to describe physical sensations. So for you, I've even talked with other vocal coaches who, I have a lot of respect for, harsh vocal coaches. And I'll have a conversation with 3 different harsh vocal coaches, and they'll all have slightly different definitions of fry. False chord seems to be a little bit more standardized. But for you, let's not even worry about what's technically right or technically wrong. But for you, what are the differences in feeling and sensation? How do you know when you're doing more of a fry tone versus a more of a false chord tone?
I think I'm also thinking about it very technical, but it's also something that I like throughout my vocal journey. The magic term of fry vocals, it has played a big role in my understanding of it. Right now, I would say like for real, like when like for me, fry is something where I know the distortion is coming from the true vocal folds, and you get like those overtones, and I can tell just from feeling, like with it also like what's very weird, and I think like what also causes a lot of confusion is that there are very different kinds of mechanics where you can like get different stuff. Like again, this stuff here. Some people would say this is a fry, but
Absolutely.
I know if I do it more Kargira-esque. Wow.
I can feel that the distortion is mainly coming from the like some type of tissue in my throat, arytenoid or false folds or whatever. It's just like that the frequency of vibration is lower, and it's just like they're easier to engage. And like people think that my high screams are fry, but like they're based on a false chordish kind of feeling, and I don't get like I'm not trying to get the overtones by focusing on like whoa, 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 and compressing that. That for me would be a pure fry, whoa, whoa, vocal fry kind of thing, which doesn't sound very screamy, right?
Ow, wow, 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 wow.
Breaking that up.
Wow, wow.
that happens. I'm just like I noticed that like when I'm very head voicey and I place distortion here, like it breaks up and funny stuff happens. Basically. And I think
Yeah.
that's a factor that a lot of people like that don't talk about, and also like different mechanics of pushing through air. There are like people who do like, it's also something I can do, which is like very scratchy for the throat long term, but like it sounds like shit right now. Yeah, this kind of shit, I don't know. It's not good right now, but like that's where like I
push more
air through, right? And like you get different qualities of distortion, and just because it's like finer, people would think like right now it sounds a bit hoarse and shit, but maybe you get the idea, right? Very long-winded answer for a simple question, but it's not as simple. And why I would, for instance, say my higher yelly stuff is fry-ish, just because I know like there, like I can feel like there is distortion coming from the true vocal folds. Like there is chaos in like the like the grid, like hey, whoa! Now you can hear it. Like now the voice is getting more squeaky. Whoa! Like me! And you can hear like the kind of thing that is happening. So I know that there's like fry engagement, I would say. And it's just about like deducting the different variables and being aware like what does what, because they're like that's the reason why you won't get that sound with like starting from whoa, like you will not get that sound by just like making that louder. And for me, that's why it happened with like projecting a distorted note, more like Quiddy saying, hey, yeah, and then finding the breaking point, yeah, whoa. Now it's getting better. Whoa, whoa. Now it sounds more fryish, and you would be like, oh no, yeah, he's doing the fry thing. But that's probably where a lot of the confusion comes from, because like the kind of overtone is part of that, but it also like behaves differently at different volumes and energy levels. Like, sorry, very like not exact answer, but
well, no, that's a great answer, because I almost have come to view the way this is kind of a tricky line to dance is, I think that there are good science-based answers for what certain things are or are not. I also, however, think that when we impose human bias and value systems and naming conventions and semantics onto those terms, the way that we interact with them tends to be almost more like folk terminology than it does scientific meaning. When we think about a lot of science, like vocal fry, that's a science-based term. False chord, well, that's an anatomical term. They distill, from academia down into the sort of landscape of harsh vocalists, which we are part of, and they start to change. So I've over time become much less, when I was in Utah as part of the vocal study that they've been working on.
You did that. Nice, cool.
In that environment, I was very, and I was far from the smartest person there. There were people who like their whole lives were dedicated to vocal science. So I spent most of my time with my fucking mouth shut, just listening. But when I was there, I was very much, in the terms of like, subduction of the air epiglottic folds, creating a smaller AP diameter and all that stuff. But now, in this space, when I'm talking to people, when I'm talking to vocalists, I'm much less focused on whether or not they're using the correct term. I'm more focused on why they're using the term they're using and what it feels like to them. And I'll call it whatever they want. It's interesting. There is, generally speaking, people say that Mark from Kardavox doesn't do a lot of fry, and I generally agree with that, because I don't do a lot of like that traditional fry tone, but that scream with that like wavery, like flappy sound in it. So I do that all the time. So now, am I a fry vocalist? It's interesting how the terms change. Also, Also
There are people
cross
who would
genre.
call that a mixed drive vocal. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I'm always interested in how everybody's using the terms, not to check the rightness of their usage, but to kind of expand my understanding of my interest is what you feel like when you do it.
Yeah.
And I think that those distinctions are part of the reason you're able to move through all of these gears. Part of the reason
But
why
in a
when
way, like you also obviously you want to like if you're talking about it, you like want to give people that are listening tools that they can use to navigate the landscape when when they are looking at something like, okay, is this is Fry tutorial? I like Sam Carter. He is doing Fry vocal. You know what? That's how it works. That was me. Like when I was 17, Ollie Sykes, is he a tutorial? Fry? What is a Fry? Okay. Reddit says he is Fry vocalist. Now I want to learn Fry. I do different thing. I can do false chord, but I can't do Fry. I suck. You know, that's how it works, right?
Yeah.
So like you have to make like, and it's very hard and chaotic just because like I feel like screaming, maybe not so much anymore, but like when I started, felt like the Wild West, where like a lot of you had Melissa Cross, that was it. Not a lot of like good terminology, I think, for navigating that, and now stuff is happening more, but like even still, like vocalists are sounding so diverse, I think, and there are so many sounds to navigate, so it's a really challenge. And also there are like always people like posting on TikTok and YouTube who like don't have a clue. I'm sorry, like I think vocal teachers are very high quality, but like there's always community people who are like, yeah guys, I will show you how to do the Fry vocal in 30 seconds, and it's like some kid that learned it 30 seconds like a month ago, which is it's okay, it's cool. Like I mean, a lot of like sometimes you get a tutorial that is really good or helps like for one person, but it does not help like the scientific conversation really. And it's okay, it's okay, but like we have to take that, and we have to keep that in mind when we talk about those things.
Yeah, the way that I help my students navigate that, because many of my students, my students aren't with me for forever. Some students I have are very long term because we do something and they want to hop right back in. Other students, I have them for 4 or 5 lessons. They figure out what they need, they move on. Right. And during that time, I know that they're watching vocal tutorials, which is always so funny because they feel like they can't like they'll be like, I watched a vocal tutorial, I'm sorry. And I'm like, why? I'm like, well, what are you sorry about? And so what I always tell them is that this is kind of how I cut through the differences, right? Because it's also regionally, right? Like with just language in general, when I go to the Deep South versus the Northwest versus the Pacific or the Northeast, versus Pacific Northwest, there's going to be differences in terminology. There are going to be things that don't make sense. Or like, one thing that I learned that I didn't know, like even different countries, different terms can be rude versus polite. And this level of like just semantic slipperiness exists in the way that we speak about harsh vocalization as well. So what I tell my students is that I ask them to try to think of terms, and I've already mentioned this a little bit: false chord, fry, epiglottis, arytenoids, these different things that we name screams. Think of them as ingredients, not as finished dishes. And so when somebody's doing a fry tutorial, and let's say it's a really great fry tutorial, they can listen to it and they're rather than thinking like, okay, this is fry, I've finally figured out what fry is. Okay. How they can view those tutorials is like, oh, this is how this dude makes his fry dish. He uses these ingredients to make a fry dish. And then when they go to somebody else's house who cooks a little bit differently, they're not going to be as confused. You know what I mean? And I like the way that you go about, like you're very thoughtful about your voice, which I think is probably even more powerful than the terms that you're using. You're very aware of what you're doing. You're very thoughtful about the terms that you're using, and you're very clearly focused on sensations and what they can turn into and where they lead. So I think that's a good testament as well to, hey, even if people do disagree with what you call your voice or your screams, maybe there's somebody out there who's like, oh, the guy from Vianova says that's a false chord, but it's a fry. At least you understand the car that you're driving. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure I'm right though. Fuck you. No.
We're all right. We're all right, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that's just because like I have done like a few years back I was in a clinic and I had my voice checked out just because I was paranoid. No issues there, but I just did a few tests on like not a lot of crazy stuff. Just like, hey, can I do one thing? Okay, I did the thing and I saw like what was happening. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that the false cores are engaged there, my friend.
You know, and to be clear, I don't dispute anything you said. No. I know.
I'm just saying that for fun.
You want to know something wild? This is something kind of wild. I'll tell you this, and then we can talk about the goat scream because we're gonna have to cut it short. We're gonna have to cut it. My hard drive only has so much space, but I do want to tell you this. So like 6 years ago, I went to get scoped because I thought I had vocal damage. No, I didn't. This is how I learned to have really bad acid reflux. And so the speech therapist, because I went to an ENT and then they sent me to a speech therapist. As she was scoping me, she's like,
how did you notice it, if I may ask? Like, what was the sign?
So for me, the main sign was that at certain points in my voice, my voice would get chatter on it. It'd get like this like rumbly vibration on the vocal cords that I was not trying to put there. And having gone to school for speech therapy and, you know, but you can find this information anywhere. That also can be a sign of vocal nodes. So I was like, I was pretty nervous. But no, the vocal cords were clean. Well, they were inflamed. But anyways, so she was like, I've never scoped a harsh vocalist before. So can you make some sounds? So I made this sound, right? One of my most common sounds. I've made a bunch in this video already. Okay. In that, when I did that with her, my epiglottis tilted back slightly. She had to finagle the camera, but the tissues above were closing up, right? Cool. Then I go to Utah, like 5-6 years later, earlier this year, I make that same sound. It feels the same. Over time, it's way different now. Yeah. Now the epiglottis is way more engaged. And like they almost couldn't even see the tissues that were at the top. But to my perception, it still sounds the same. If you even go back and listen to the sound has not changed very much. And the sensation, if it did change, it changed so slowly I didn't notice it. And so for me, that created this whole thing of like, well, you know, I'm such a sensation-based guy, you know, that's a challenge to my way of thinking because the sensation can seemingly stay the same while the voice changes. And so that that's kind of led me to think, well, maybe it's more of a like intersectional, like holistic approach. Sensation plus sound plus longevity equals, I don't know. But that was one of the most fascinating things I took away from that study. I was like, that looks different. And I expected it to look the same because it sounds and feels the same.
Yeah, that's wild. That is wild.
Yeah. You know, who knows what, I don't really have anywhere to go with that other than the fact that there's yet another gear in how we can, there's yet another
like dimensions to this.
Exactly.
Man. Yeah.
But one thing I do want to hear about is this goat scream. And
let's do the goat scream.
I'm interested in you talking about that because you've pointed out intuitively that I'm someone who's naturally got a much lower voice, you know, I'm
a bit lower.
I'm much more comfortable singing like, you know, down it's all, you know, baby, lock them doors into the lights down low.
Your lowest note is probably lower than my lowest note.
Yeah, say. And so if I were to approach that scream you did, you call the goat scream, I think it makes sense. I would have to do it with a lot of training and caution and care. And, you know, for me, it would be something that, could I do it? Sure. Would I have to really train into it? I think probably so.
Can I ask you, like, what do you think it is? Just like, how do you think it works? And I'm not saying, I'm not doing this to like dunk on you epic style, but just because like, I know, okay, one thing that people have to consider is stuff sounds different mixed. Why? Because you have a lot of compression on it. Compression brings out more overtones. So like stuff that maybe is more false chordish sounds more fryish because more overtones are shown with like it being squished. And I think that's something that is also like not talked out about a lot. And for me, it's like I think this is more of an outlier technique. It's very weird, you know what I mean? And it's something that I stumbled upon by accident. So I would really love to hear like what you think it was, and like maybe I can tell you what it is. And it's not about like showing that you don't know what you're talking about, more like how I just want to show like how perception can be so drastically different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Is that something you would be into?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to put it fresh in my brain since it's been like 20 minutes since we heard it.
Of course.
But I will say I do agree with you. I don't think this is a sound that I think this would be like one of the worst sounds to be like, that's a fry scream or that's a false chord scream. That'd be one of the worst to do it with. But I think this is a good spot. So, because I think it's when you're like all tilted back right there. Yeah. So let's go ahead and hit play.
Yeah, that's what happens.
So to me, I'm gonna tell you exactly what it sounds like. To me, it sounds like you are pretty much straight up just in your head voice shouting, right? You're in your head voice shouting.
Plus one for you.
Hell yeah. You're in your head voice, you're shouting, I will say doing it strategically, not necessarily to imply that it sounds very loose and raw and not necessarily that it's super surgically precise, but it also doesn't sound like you're squeezing the vocal cords together and over compressing. And part of the reason for that is it's not, it's, there's a little bit more airflow going through there. So I'm not hearing a ton of like unnecessary glottal compression. There were 2 points of distortion that I found the most interesting, one of which is slower and floppier, and one of which is thinner and more sparkly. So that kind of tells me that you may be getting some distortion, a little bit of distortion along the edge of the vocal folds themselves, which I'm always a little cautious of, but there's definitely some flappiness happening from a mixture of, depending on the tension of the laryngeal funnel, could be false folds, could be aryepiglottic folds, could be arytenoids, maybe popping in and out and doing this. Because one thing we have to remember is when we are talking about anatomy being the driving force for distortion, we have to think about the tension on that tissue, because that's going to change the sound, right? I can go, both of which heavily involve my epiglottis, but there's no similarity. So what I would say is what I hear happening from that slower vibration, it's looser tissue, right? Maybe not as loose as like, but that's where I hear us getting that floppiness. And in those moments where our tissue tends to be looser, we tend to have, it's a little less focused on one individual piece of anatomy, especially because it's just going through a tube and it's pulling on other things. What would I name that? I don't know.
No, I don't care, but like
style.
that was a very surgical and I would say accurate description, actually. So like, dude, if I would have like watched this video and like I wouldn't have been part of it and like you would have said this, I would be like, yeah, he got it. Pretty much. Like maybe not the specifics, right? And I mean, I didn't do this to like, test you. It's just like a fun guessing thing. You know what I mean? It's just
yeah. I feel you, man. It was I get you. But yeah, tell me about it. Now that I know I'm at least pretty close, talk to me about it.
So like, I think I have to also like touch on like how I got there, right? Because like, this was not something where I set out to learn it and I learned it. It's just that, in the original demo, like I'm doing one kind of high false chord yell, also at the start of the breakdown, more like, "Whoa, up here!" And it's like it sounds very weird, and already for me at least, it's a very weird yell kind of thing. It's and then watch higher with a very head voice kind of thing, and it sounds for me like very nasty and wild, right? And also like painful. It's an agonizing sound, I think. And I did that in the original demo, like no one can take you. And then I did a pain on that technique, and like a little bit higher, like more agonizing, basically. And then I started, like when I recorded it final, I started higher. Like I was like, no one can take, kind of like that range, right? And I was like, okay, the last scream, it has to be even higher than that, die. And I wanted to do that thing even higher. And then I was trying around, okay, with the placement, and then I found this. I was like, okay, how about I just do that thing with the very head voicey kind of stuff. I have to add to that, I did take classical singing lessons when I was like 18. My OG teacher said I could have been a countertenor, so like, this kind of stuff, it's very easy.
I know, I knew it because I can hear you yawning out your high notes, which is a very, I was like,
like very,
exactly the right, the opening of the space versus the anyway,
yeah,
keep
that's something
going.
I'm learning right now, actually, like the very tight thing. But that's what I would say I grew up with that. Kind of shit. Like, it's not like I could sing an aria right now because I haven't, done any of that stuff, but that's a very natural feeling for me. And for some reason, like, and I wouldn't advise anyone to try this really, just because I think you really have to have like get the head voice part right. Like, that's the base. Like, if you don't have that, don't even attempt it, right?
Mhm.
But if you do that and put like that distortion there, that's what happens. I don't. That's what's funny with this one is like
Yeah.
I did it the first time today, and I'm still working on getting it like reliable for live. It's a scary sound because it's so loud, and I can't practice it at home. And like
Yeah.
when I hit it, I'm surprised. That's what happens. It sounds crazy.
Yeah. That's a wow, I'm not gonna worry about it. I was like, what note are you even like basing that at?
Like, pine! I'm doing pine! And then, but like when I put the distortion in, like it just like, as I said, I think when you put distortion into like weird
Yeah.
placements with head with like very chill head voice, like weird stuff happens. Like there was who was it? Like some guy talked about maybe Tony Linke. Shout out Tony Linke. I don't know if you're aware of him. Like mismatch of energies, where like doing something, and when you don't match the intensity of the sound, stuff breaks up and goes crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I follow you. Yeah, I follow you. Yeah, it's interesting, and there's a lot of like it's a sound that I would call like loose and raw, but certainly not unfocused. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's an intention of things to break apart, but to break apart in a way that is still getting you an approximation of where you want to be. I know that sounds kind of silly, but
no, I get. It's not like I'm just screaming and seeing what happens. Like
exactly.
I know the vocal posture. I aim for the note. I add distortion. Weird shit happens. That's it. And like it's like very like right now I'm trying to get it like reliable for live, just because like we played a show in London and I was so pumped, and I just did. I was like, and then I like transitioned into a different scream.
Yeah.
Just because like when you try to put tension or like anything into it, it just like it straight up doesn't work.
It won't work. Yeah, no, you can't. Like there are certain screams that they just have to be open and loose, and that's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's fascinating, and
that's the goat scream, man.
That's the goat scream, and it makes sense why you call it that, because there are clips of goats going like and it's obviously not
totally
like that. For sure. Well, I think that's an iconic sound to wrap it up on, dude, because that's pretty.
Totally. I know we're way over time. Probably we can maybe like do an intro and be like, if you want to hear the goat scream, stay till the end. Like go full YouTube. I don't know.
maybe we'll put the thing I've found on my YouTube channel. I don't know if it's me specifically or if it's my audience or whatever, is like the less you try to like bait them, the happier they'll be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if anything, just a clip of this put at the front will be how I would do it.
No, totally.
But it's a great sound for sure. So let's go ahead then and let's do the last part, which is like you said. I feel like there's a pretty good awareness of you guys, but just in case somebody's watching this and they're like, who the heck is this dude in the fuzzy white hat? Like, you got the new album that at the time this video goes up will have been released. So yeah, what should people know? Where should people keep up to date with you guys? I mean, pretty much everywhere on social media.
Yeah, I mean, standard stuff. We're very active on social media. Hopefully less now that the album is out. So you can just like, hit us up there, like follow us there. I guess it feels weird to say follow us on social media. It feels tacky, but it is what it is. You can listen to the music pretty much anywhere as it is. Like, honestly, for me, like the main call out is just if you like what you hear, if you're interested in the stuff, listen to the music. Give the album a spin. The whole album will get you on a ride of different kinds of things: jazz, metal, soul, funk, electronics, 80s synthwave. You will have it all.
You'll have
Go
it
there.
all.
Yeah, go there, listen to the album, and if you want to come to a concert, we will announce a lot soon.
Hell yeah. Sounds good. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I'm pumped for the album. I'm actually gonna, like, now that I've got the reaction done, you know, I can open the floodgates, like I said. But I appreciate you showing up on such short notice. Great conversation. Great listening to the song. And to everyone watching, as I always say, many thanks, much love. I'm out.
Thank you, guys. Bye.